Okay, so the theme of this week's lesson is don't overthink it. I'm going to talk more about that as we get into this video, but we're going to take what I played in the intro there and we're going to break all that down note for note. I'll explain where those notes come from. And the good news is it's all played using just one scale. It was 5 notes. It's our minor pentatonic scale. I played all of that using just the minor pentatonic scale. We're going to look at it in different spots on the fretboard, but that's where it all came from. So in this video, we'll go through the first half of that. If you'd like to watch the second half, so the part 2 video, and also download the tablature and get the MP3 jam track for this lesson, you can get all those extra materials so that you can practice playing everything we're going to talk through by going to activemelody.com and doing a search for EP619. Okay, so when I say don't overthink this, I wrote that down actually, and I thought this would be a good title for, actually I was typing it out to somebody in a comment, or it was either an email or a comment, and I thought this would be a good title for a future video, and that's what we have. But the reason I was saying that was because this person had made something so complicated out of something that was so meant to be so simple. Like in this example, this lesson, I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible. It's just one scale. It's 5 notes. And like, what all can you do with 5 notes? Well, I played this entire lead using those 5 notes, and I want to show you how to do that and how to think that way. Now, I'm not knocking those of you that want to get in under the hood and understand the relationship of every note. What is the one? What is the second interval? What are the relationship between those two and all that stuff? But the problem is sometimes you can kill it by overthinking it, and I think it all depends on when you overthink it or when you think that far down into it. For example, when you're learning how to speak, if you think about, relating language to learning how to improvise, they're the same thing. You're learning a language when you're learning how to improvise on any instrument. But when you're learning how to speak, you're 2, 3, 4 years old, you don't know really what you're doing other than you're making a sound out of your mouth that you heard someone else make, and you realize when I make this sound I get this result. And so now if I put 2 sounds together, like 2 words together, I get a different result. And that's sort of how you learn to speak. There is no linear program that somebody sits down and says, okay, step 1 we're going to do this, step 2 none of that happens. It all happens through osmosis. It's organic. It's just soaking up your surroundings, and it's listening and getting results. That's why you're motivated to keep doing it and to keep going with it, because you get different results depending on the sounds you make. It's not until way later in your school years that you start dissecting sentences and understanding what a prepositional phrase is, or what a pronoun or an adjective and all that stuff. That comes way later. In the beginning, you're just trying to recreate those sounds. And I want you to take some of that philosophy to your playing. So if you're the type of person that's in under the microscope and you're trying to analyze everything, you might want to just step back and just try and feel it a little bit. Like listen to what's going on and try and get those sounds in your head. And then after the fact, once you can kind of play it, and maybe even play it and not know why. I mean, that's okay to do that. After the fact, you can go in and sort of, understand every sort of detail and figure that out. But the way my brain works is I like to connect everything back to something. It has to be simple for me. I'm a super basic person when it comes to playing an instrument. My brain, I can't handle complexity like that. That's why I'm not a jazzer. I can't do the crazy jazz stuff. I just can't compute that way. And I'm jealous. I wish I could, but I can't. So what I do is I connect it all back to chord shapes. So in this song we're going to be playing, it's an F sharp minor. And so we're going to be looking at a few 3 or 4 containers, which are our F sharp minor chord. So we'll be looking at one here, we'll be looking at one up here, we'll be looking at one up here, and what we'll do inside of those containers is we'll put licks inside them. That's how I think of improvising. So when I'm improvising, that's how the fretboard lights up. Now why and all those stuff, like what's the relationship between this and that doesn't really happen so much. After the fact, when I'm making a video, I might have to analyze it to explain it to somebody, but that's not what's going on in your brain. So anyway, I just want you to keep that stuff in mind as we get into this. So let's listen to the first phrase, and remember, we're playing an F sharp minor, and we're using our minor pentatonic scale. Let's listen to that, and they'll break it down. All right, so our first lick sounds like that, minor pentatonic scale, pattern 1. And we're going to be connecting it to this chord shape. And so this would be your E shape. From the cage system, think of your E chord, first position, move it up 2 frets, capo with your finger. That's your E chord in this position. That would be an F sharp. Now we lift our middle finger, and you get the minor version of that, just like a minor E minor chord. So think of that. We're playing it here though. That's the container we're going to be connecting these first few licks into. So once you can visualize this F sharp minor chord, where I've got my bar here, this fret, the second fret, is going to be the fret that I play every one of those notes on when I'm playing my pattern 1 minor pentatonic scale. So you look at this. You can see that where my bar was, I hit every one of those notes when I played that scale. So just connect that in your mind. So we're going to start by barring the first 3 strings on the second fret, which are in that bar there, right? We're going to play only on strings 2 and 3. So we're going to hit those 2 notes. And I do a hammer on to the 4th fret, 3rd string. These notes are all in that pattern 1 minor pentatonic scale. But we're going to hit that, come back to the 2nd fret, and then we're going to go down to the 4th string and play 4, 2, 4, 4. That's it. So it's... Now, the only thing that will trip some of you up, and I'll just mention this, I don't want to get into the weeds because we're trying to keep this simple, but is the timing of this. So all you have to do is when the jam track starts, not the count into the jam track, but when the music actually starts, this comes in on the 4. So we count it like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Okay? So that's the first phrase. Now the next thing I play couldn't be any easier. It's that. It's just strings 1 and 2 on the 2nd fret, and it's an upstroke. Just a quick little burst. And it's really just more of a rhythmic thing. So it's like 1 and 2 and 3 and. So it comes in on the and of 3. If you're wanting to count that out, that's where you do it. You don't have to do it where I'm doing it. You could work that in anywhere. You could play it on the 2 or on the 4. It doesn't really matter so much. But I was just doing it on the and of 3 to give it like a little bit of a rhythmic thing. Now after that, I'm going to come up into pattern 2. And so pattern 2 connects to pattern 1. If we look at strings 1 and 2, for example, these notes here on the 5th fret, strings 1 and 2, you can now play those with your index finger, and then you can come up and play. So this would be 7, 5, 7, 5, and then the 6th fret, 3rd string. And that's the top part of pattern 2 of your minor pentatonic scale. Those are all 5 notes of that scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now what I love about this area is you've got some bends you can do on the 7th fret, 1st string. You hear that in the blues all the time. And that's just an octave higher than this. Same exact thing that we have down here in pattern 1. So any of those licks you can play in that little box in pattern 1, it's the same thing. It's just an octave higher. So what I ended up doing was just barring and playing strings 1 and 2, and I slid from the 5th fret to the 7th fret, and then back to the 5th fret. And then I came down to the 2nd fret, which this would make sense when you're thinking about the scale, right? Yeah, those notes would be in that. So would these. So would these. And this is a nice little takeaway that you can remember when you're playing in a minor song like this, and like a minor pentatonic kind of vibe. You can just find your pattern 1 minor pentatonic scale and play that, and that's going to sound great. You can also come down 2 frets from here, which would be open in this case. But if you were in a different key, you could, like, let's say you were up here. If you're in the key of A, for example, you have those notes that you can play, and those always sound good. You hear a lot of people using them. It has kind of a Steely Dan kind of vibe. I hear that in some of their stuff. Anyway, let's go back to F sharp minor here. So we have, that's the lick that I played. So then after that lick, I did another little upstroke, just like we did before. It's just sort of re-emphasizing that rhythm part. I don't have a rhythm guitar track in this, so I'm just kind of doubling up and trying to keep a lot of open space, yet fill some of those little rhythmic little pops and bursts that you would hear in like R&B. And then watch this lick. Isn't that cool? It's just minor pentatonic scale pattern 1, and you've probably done some of that stuff, right? It's kind of the Chuck Berry territory. But I do a full bend here on the 4th fret 3rd string, and then I hit this 5th fret 1st string with my pinky. So you're going like this, and then back, and then release it. So that's a little tricky. If you're on an acoustic guitar, I'm sorry, I apologize. You can do this if you have super light gauge strings on an acoustic, but otherwise you're gonna have to slide or something, some kind of alternative. So we have that bend, then we release, and then we come down to that 2nd fret 3rd string, and then we just do 4-2 on the 3rd string, 4th fret 4th string. So all together. Kind of a country vibe, but I love this and I use this a lot. And there's another version of this. Instead of me just going like this, I could have used my pinky and barred that 5th fret 2nd string as well and done this. So you hear that kind of that pedal steel thing, and that's where this is coming from. It's got that sort of country vibe, but it's just cool enough that it works as sort of a blues thing as well. And then there's this lick. Super simple. Like, just keep it simple. I'm just staying within this minor pentatonic scale pattern 1, really, for the most part, except for that one little slide. This is sliding up to that 4th fret 4th string, and then I'm going to go ahead and bar the first 3 strings again on that 2nd fret. And I'm playing this, and what I'm doing is I'm hitting, right? So I'm doing that, but then I'm also plucking with my ring finger on that 1st string, that F sharp note. So you hear that in the blues quite a bit. I hear Stevie Ray Vaughan doing that kind of thing, where you hear that drone string kind of ringing out. That's what it sounds like. So let me do that slowly. So after that, I hit the 2nd fret 3rd string, and then watch this. I went right back into pattern 2, 6th fret 3rd string, 5th fret 2nd string. Those 2 notes, these 2. And I just played those just like that. Just gave it some vibrato, let it ring out for a while. You see how kind of basic and simple all of this is. There's really nothing to get under a microscope about. I mean, it's really just, I'm just following. So far, I've really just been staying in pattern 1 of my minor pentatonic scale. I could have done the whole solo down here, but just to give you some variety, I decided to come up the fretboard here. So we're now in pattern 2, and we're going to continue to ascend and climb this fretboard going this direction and ascend in pitch. So after this, check this out. This is cool. Isn't that an awesome sounding lick? It's that little pull off. So let me show you what I'm playing. Here's what I'm thinking about. So we've been in pattern 2, which is a common area. But then if I look at this note here, that's my F sharp note. So instead of me playing that with my ring finger, I can play that with my index finger, and then I'm in a different pattern. I'm up here in pattern 3, but I have. This is pattern 3 of my minor pentatonic scale. And what I love about pattern 3 is this second string here. It just sounds very kind of Albert King-ish. So I went 7 and then up to the 10th fret with a slight push. Now we're going to go up to the first string and we're going to play 7, 9, and then we're going to come back down with that pull off between the 8th fret and the 7th fret on the first string. And then we're going to go back to 10 and 7 on the second string. And that's the lick. Just remember, this is your F sharp note and where that is in relation to this pattern, so that you can get into that in the future. You can just find your root note of the key of the song, play it on the second string there, and then you're in position to do all that stuff. Now this is a different lesson than what I talked about last week. I'm going to put that lesson up on the screen as a quick reference, but last week I talked about finding your root note and using your ring finger to play and then come up a string, and you can play your minor pentatonic scale that way. That's still the same 5 notes, it's just a different approach. Instead of us playing in these little patterns, which are more vertical, we're playing across a fretboard, which is more horizontal. You can use one to connect to the other. There's all kinds of value once you can see playing the fretboard in these different ways. So I want you to go check that lesson out. If you're watching this out of context and you're not familiar with it, definitely check out last week's lesson, because I think a lot of you will really like that. So then I came up here and played my F sharp minor chord up here. So this is just my F sharp minor chord using the A minor shape, right? There's the A minor shape. And so this would be like, there's the note on the 5th string. And so I'm barring now on that 9th fret to get the sound. And so all I'm doing is I'm playing the top 3 notes out of that. So I don't have to make the full bar. I can just do the stair step shape, right? And I know that on this 3rd string, 11th fret, that's my F sharp note. So if I know where my F sharp note is on the 3rd string, I can build this minor triad off of that. That's how I think. So I went, just played the notes of the chord, and then a little embellishment. I put my pinky on the 12th fret 1st string. All right, so then this next lick goes, and this is pattern 4 of my minor pentatonic scale. So in my mind, pattern 4, which looks like this, those are the notes of pattern 4. They all fit into this container. That's how I categorize the fretboard. So I see this minor chord shape, which in this case, if I play it up here, I'm playing an F sharp minor. And right inside of that little container that I'm visually looking at there, I've got this. So when I play this, that is coming out of this container. And remember, I started with playing that. There's the little embellishment. So it makes sense then that I could just go right into that lick. Now, was I thinking about every interval and its relationship to? No, I wasn't thinking about that. I just know licks that live inside of chord shapes. And how do I know the sounds of them? Because I've played them before. And just like I'm like an infant in that way, or you know, a small child. Like I know how to make the sound to communicate what it is that I want. And that sound, that sort of southern rock kind of bendy lick that you might hear in a Leonard Skinner song, I know that lives in pattern 4. And I know pattern 4 lives inside of this chord shape. And I know I can find this chord shape based on the root note. Do you see how I trace it all back? I find the note, then I can build my container visually. And then inside that container, I start to put all these licks and scales and ideas. That is my way of sort of organizing the fretboard. But it keeps it very simple. I don't have to get out my microscope all the time. I don't have to get it out at all, in fact. I can just play a little phrase here. And to play that, we do a full bend on this 12th fret 2nd string. And then I hit the 12th fret 1st string with my pinky. Then hit it and release it. And then watch this. So that's 10, 12 on the second string, and then 11th fret, 3rd string. We go back to that 11th fret, 3rd string, and then down to the 9th fret, 3rd string. So all together. Okay, so the next phrase after this, I played this. And this is kind of going into what I talked about last week. If you look at this, there's my root note, but notice I'm playing it with my ring finger. And so last week I talked about playing vertically, so we can go. And that's what I'm doing when I play. I'm going into that sort of skip a fret kind of scale thing. It's still the minor pentatonic scale, but I'm going to slide into this, which would be inside of my pattern 4. So that's ring finger on the 11th fret, 4th string, and index finger on the 9th fret, 3rd string. And then I'm going to slide down with my ring finger down to that 9th fret, 4th string. So it's like this. And then I'm going to keep walking down using the skip a fret thing where I skipped. See, I skipped a fret there, and then I skipped this fret. So it's, then we go down to 7, 9th fret, 5th string, 7th fret, 4th string, back to the 9th fret, 5th string. So all together. All right, so that's going to be my stopping point for this part 1 video. We'll go over the second half in the part 2 video. And we've covered a lot of material in this lesson. Leave a comment and let me know what you like about this or what you didn't like about this. But just remember, as you're doing this, as you're learning how to improvise and learning how to speak the language of an instrument, any instrument, just don't get so into the weeds that you're missing the whole point. You got to kind of listen to stuff and kind of feel it out and even experiment. Just sort of play and find something that works. You may not know why it works. That doesn't matter. You don't have to know why something's going to work before you do it. You just have to kind of find sounds that you like, sonic things that please you. And then down the road, when you've got some free time, you can start looking under the hood and trying to understand why it all fits together. But that's not nearly as fun as making the sounds in the first place. All right, we'll see you in part 2 where we'll go over the second half.